Hi, this is Cathy Goodwin, and today's topic is what to do if your career change is stalled. I've gotten a few questions like that. Like, I started moving to a career change and I'm stuck. I know I need to do more, but what? So, does this sound like you? You started searching for a career, maybe you checked out some options, and then nothing seems to click. Or you're wondering if you'll ever find a new career that makes you happy. Maybe you're at that point in the search when you're feeling discouraged. Or you feel like there's a block between you and your next career. It's sort of like there's an obstacle in the road when you're trying to drive somewhere. You can almost see it and touch it, and it's there, and you don't know what to do about it. Well, first question I would have is your block emotional or career related? Now, I want to make it clear that I am not a therapist, counselor, or mental health professional of any kind. So here's my take based on experience and opinion. So let's look at emotional blocks versus career blocks. First, here are some examples of what I would characterize as emotional blocks. And again, you can touch base with a therapist or counselor or mental health professional to get the most accurate professional opinion. First, childhood messages. A lot of times this comes up when people are looking for a career. It's sort of like you've always heard your whole life, you should be a lawyer. Well, you were a lawyer and now you're not. I actually know someone who was told her whole life, you ought to be a teacher. So she dutifully went to college and got a teaching credential. And then she decided that she wanted to be a dog walker and she started a very successful business. Now, luckily her messages disappeared and her family eventually came around and was very understanding. But imagine that kind of message. You should be something. And if that's hovering over you during your job search, it might very well interfere with your efforts. Another is you might be labeled in your family. So I know people who come to me and say, yeah, my brother was the successful one. I was the pretty one. So you kind of have this notion that you are not supposed to be successful. Or maybe it's your sister was the literary one and you're the manual dexterity one, or you're the athletic one. And now you say, well, I'm really not the athletic one. I'm really, and I am a successful person. And it can be very hard to dislodge those messages. So if you have something like that going on, you probably need to work with a therapist, and sometimes a life coach can help. I'm not an expert in that area. Or sometimes you've gotten a message like jobs are just for money. It's just a job. Or you're supposed to be satisfied. Just be glad you have a job. You may have had very intense programming. In other words, programming of any kind from childhood can be hard to dislodge. It's something that many career consultants like me do not work with, so you need to get those messages taken care of if you think they're interfering. Now, you may have current challenges that come up. In fact, one of the things that happens when you start any kind of a transition is that your mind starts to return to the past, and you start remembering things, and things come up that you haven't thought of in years. And it can be very helpful to work with a counselor or therapist at this point. So one thing might be if you've had recent trauma. A lot of times people say, okay, I just got a divorce. I just moved out. He just moved out. She just moved out. And I need a new job. That's a lot to do at the same time. Some people do. Sometimes, for example, if you just had a change in your circumstances, you need a new job, and then you do need a career consultant no matter what. But if you're experiencing grief or anger or other emotions from that trauma, you need to work with a therapist, with a professional, because that may interfere. You may have family pressures. I don't touch these. Here's what happens a lot. I get calls from someone who says, I want to move to a new city, and my spouse has ties to the community and wants to stay here. If we stay, I give up a big future in my career. If we move, my spouse will hate me forever. That is not a career decision. I can help you with establishing what is likely to happen, how to make the move successful, how to consider alternatives either way. If you decide to stay home, what else can you do? But I cannot help you decide how to deal with the family. Most career consultants cannot. So you have, for another example, is I had a client who wanted to move. They actually had a nice setup. They were ready to go and everything was going, and they wanted to talk about relocation. And then they said, but the 14-year-old doesn't want to go. She's put her foot down. She's screaming, I won't move. Well, that it's something for a family counselor. And I actually talked to a family counselor who was a friend when I was living in New Mexico. This came up over a lunch situation and lunch meeting. And I said, well, I've got this client. And she said, well, there are ways to do that. You can talk to a 14-year-old. A 14-year-old does not make family decisions, but you have to know what to say, how to say it. And that's a matter for someone experienced with family and children. So that if that's happening, that's something that really has to be taken care of outside the career consulting situation or session. Then you may have underlying anxiety or depression. If you have this, some people do have lifelong depression and anxiety, and it can be physiological, it can be something in the way people are wired. If that's the case, then obviously you would need to work with you probably are working with a trained professional counselor or therapist or psychiatrist, and you need to tell them that you want to talk to a consultant about careers. And when I work with clients in that situation, I'm always open to talking to their professional if they want to give them permission. And usually it does not have to happen, but they need to know that you are doing this and make sure that nothing they're telling you is going to conflict with what's going on. So the key is to be aware. Now, these things happen. I'm mentioning them because people sometimes ask me, well, who should I talk to? You or a counselor, or you or a therapist? And these are some of the answers I might give. Now, here are some examples of career blocks. These are almost 100% career, not knowing what to do next. If you're not paralyzed due to one of the earlier reasons, you just may not know. This may be something that a lot of times you haven't done this before and you're stuck. So what is your next step? You've been doing the same thing over and over. It's not working. What next? That's very much a career block. Or you're not getting good results. You're out there talking to lots of people. I once met someone who had been on something like 200 interviews for information and had gotten nowhere. Well, when we sat down, it turned out there were some concerns about the way he was conducting those interviews. They were coming across like sales calls, and I think he was being a little too needy in the way he approached people. They seem, when you go out on these calls, you have to structure them a certain way. And when we role played, we discovered some really creative and exciting ways he could restructure his information searches. So that's something you can do. Also, it might be that you're searching the wrong places, or you're not searching enough. That's one of the biggest questions I get. One of the biggest challenges is, okay, I talked to 2 people. I hate that career. What do I do? Sometimes you can't stop with 2. You need to talk to more, or you may need to do a trial experiment to learn more about that career before writing it off. You may need guidelines for networking and informational interviews. For instance, a lot of people say, well, where do I go to network? Or what is this networking? And I don't want to do it. Well, it's very different from what people expect. And today, informational interviews are not as easy as they used to be. If you remember that when What Color is Your Parachute was first published, you could walk up to almost anyone and say, I want information. And it was such a novel request, you would probably get a lot of time from whoever you asked. Nowadays, people have all read What Color is Your Parachute and a lot more books. So they're more wary of, W-A-R-Y, wary of questions. So you have to be more strategic in the way you plan your search. You may need a realistic understanding, and most people who work with careers have worked with people in a lot of different fields, have studied different fields, and can tell you the pros and cons. And not as completely, obviously, as a search, but they can give you a lot of realistic information. So, for instance, if you say, well, I want to do this, but I don't have that background, sometimes we can suggest a way to overcome that obstacle, and sometimes we can suggest an alternate career where you don't need that background. And you may just be frustrated. I mean, you've been researching, you've been doing this a while, you want a new take, you're just ready to do something else, or you just don't want to do it anymore. And you want, maybe, again, you're not getting the success, or you just feel like you're doing the same thing over and over, and it's time to do something different. These things are all questions, concerns, issues that you can raise with a career consultant. And 95% of the time, they're strictly career. Now, if you don't want to do anything, you just want to lie on the couch, and I've had clients who said that this could be a career block, or it could be an emotional block, or it could just mean that you need some time out. And that's something you have to decide and work out. Sometimes after I talk to someone, I can say, well, I think this is something for a therapist. But sometimes if you just want to lie on the couch, it may just be that you don't have any good options. You don't have any good reasons to get up off that couch. Who can blame you? You have a job you hate. You have no idea what to do to get out of that job. So of course you want to lie on the couch. So sometimes finding a new job, sometimes going through different motions will get you moving. And you don't look forward to today's activities. Well, obviously that can be due to someone who is globally depressed or clinically depressed, doesn't want to look forward to anything. Or again, there are probably other conditions that I may not be saying that right. But on the other hand, if you have a job you don't like, of course you don't look forward to doing things. Maybe you don't look forward to the job search process or the career search process. That's perfectly understandable. Maybe you're going at it in a way that is not right for your style and you need to do something different. You need to be open to new ways of doing the search. So that certainly is possible. And sometimes just changing what you do makes a difference. And sometimes just time. I had a friend who really didn't like his job. He was really, really upset. And so upset he actually went to a counselor and a coach and a bunch of other people. And they all said, you got to change jobs. This is horrible. Well, he postponed it for whatever reason. Other things came up. He went on vacation. And he kind of decided after a while he liked the job. He wasn't going anywhere. So sometimes things just morph on their own without your doing anything. And you want to spend more time doing something that isn't career related. Maybe you want to spend more time with your family, or you want to do music, or you want to do art, you want to work out at the gym, you want to do something fun. That could be something that relates to your emotions. Maybe you're not getting something out of a part of your life that needs attention. And sometimes if you work on something outside your life, your career perks up and just takes off on its own. That happens more than you would think. Sometimes it just means that you need to look at your career options a certain way. And sometimes if you have the ability, the means, the opportunity, you can take time and spend more time on something else, and then gradually you'll find yourself drifting back to a career. You'll have a clearer sense of what you want to do. Emotional blocks, again, I want to clarify, require professional psychotherapy with a licensed professional, not me. Career blocks can really be handled in several ways. One is, obviously, I'm a little biased, but a career coach or consultant can help you a lot if you want to work through them. You can also do things with self-help. There are people, in fact, the majority of people do manage their own careers on their own, and you may decide for yourself. Sometimes they take longer if they do it on their own than they would if they'd gone to a coach or consultant, and some people do just fine with what we could call self-help. They read books, they talk to people, they're very aware of who they are. Maybe they do exercises in self-awareness and meditation. They know how to listen to their intuition. That is probably the single biggest factor in whether self-help will work for you. They have mentors. These days, more and more people want to be paid for mentoring. That's just a fact of life. But you will find mentors. I know, for example, I've been involved in a co-working space, which means people come together in a particular area, sort of like a coffee shop, except that it's under one roof and it's safe to leave your computer out while you take a break. I can explain more if people are interested at a future date. But the idea is that in those spaces, a lot of times people will informally mentor each other because they're part of a community and they genuinely care, and they will take time to help you without charging you. Sometimes if you belong to a group, a church group, or a social group, or a college alumni group, you will find mentors who will help you at no charge. Sometimes when I work with clients, we have a combination. I'll recommend someone who turns out to be a mentor using my own contacts. If someone refers you to someone and says you ought to talk to that person, I would recommend that you either say, okay, I'd like to do it, and then really follow through, or just say, no, at this point, I'd like to think about it. Because if you say yes, and someone takes the trouble to set up a meeting, which is not easy these days, and you don't follow through, then you're really doing a disservice to everyone. So what I would suggest is, if someone offers to introduce you to someone who will be a mentor, who will answer your questions, be a resource, always follow through. And I would clearly say always, or just say up front, I don't want to follow. I won't do it. So, some reasons people have career blocks. First of all, career change is not the same as career success. It doesn't take the same mindset, doesn't take the same skills and approaches. If you've been working for a company for many years and you've had some promotions, you understand how to achieve career success in that world. If you've been in a business and you've achieved success, you understand how to achieve success in that world. Change is a different process. It calls for different skills, a different mindset, different approaches. Career change is nonlinear. There are no markers, and it happens in small increments. It's sort of like a zigzag. You go along, and things sort of seem to be happening, and then you think, oh, I'm close, and then you realize you're not close. Or you just go through the motions, and just when you're so sick of doing it, something falls in your lap. This happens a lot. I've just been amazed at how often not only I, but other career consultants say this. You'll be working on a career change. You'll talk to people, you'll do the information interviews, you'll spend time investigating, you'll maybe do some experimental jobs, you'll do some short-term positions to see if you like it. Nothing seems to click, and then one day, out of the blue, you'll see an ad for something that's perfect, or someone will write you a letter and say, are you interested in this? Or someone will call you and say, I heard about this and it's perfect, and it clicks. So there's just no way around that. You can make it more likely to happen, but the truth is that it's very frustrating just because it's nonlinear. You don't know how far along you are in the process, and change happens very, very small steps at a time. You may get closer by saying, well, I think I'd like something like this, and then you read about something and you say, I don't know if I'd like that. You have to remember that every job is different. So looking at a career, you have to look broadly, not at a particular job. Then your environment. First, your geographic location. If you live in an area where there are very few opportunities in other fields, then you're going to be limited. It's just going to take longer because you either have to do everything by phone or go visit, and you may have to limit what your options are if you want to stay in that environment. You may have no time. I mean, if you're working 60 or more hours a week and you can't get away during the day, then your job search is not going to be easy to conduct. There's just no way around it. You need time during business hours to talk to people. So when I get a call from someone who says, well, the only time I can talk to you is Sunday evening at 9 o'clock, we can't do much about your career change. You have to find a way to get into a situation where you can get some time off, some flex time. And there are ways to do it. It might mean saving up money until you can take a break from your job, using vacation time, and have all your ducks lined up ready to go, taking lunches, taking breaks. I really can't tell you how to do it generally. Sometimes we have specific ideas. Only you can assess the risks. If you want to call in with an excuse or call in with vacation time or sick time or however you want to use it, the ethics and the practicality depend very much on you and your particular situation. So you have to work this out. So what you can also do is try out new careers in very small steps. One example is a woman who was a lawyer who wanted to get into nonprofits and work with animals. So the first thing she did was she started volunteering at an animal shelter. Then she got licensed as an animal control officer in that particular state and became a part-time employee with the shelter. Then she became an associate director of that animal shelter. Then she realized she did not want to stay there forever. She got an offer to be a full director of a animal shelter in another county, and she was in a position to move to that county. So that's the kind of small steps that happen. That's actually unusually quick. Sometimes things take even more steps, but you may have to go step by step to do this. But the idea is to be willing to try something. If you're working full-time or part-time and you cannot give up what you have, that's certainly understandable. And then you might want to try to find ways to spend some time in the new field just to see it from the inside out. Be open to opportunities that come along. A lot of times I can almost always tell if someone's going to make a career change successfully, and that's because they're open to something new. If I say, why don't you try X, and they, no, absolutely not, no way. Okay, one or two things, or I've looked into it and it's not good. That is legitimate sometimes. But if you are saying, no, from what I've heard, I read in the papers, this isn't going to work, that's usually a sign of blocking things off too early. You have to go through a lot of no's, and really experiment with different things to find what you really want. So obviously you don't want to try everything. I mean, if someone says, why don't you join the circus for a week, and you want to be maybe a sales consultant, that's not necessarily what you want to do, although you never know. Sometimes being in show business for a week will help your mainstream job. But the idea is you want to be open to something new, even if it's something unexpected, rather than just cross it off too quickly. Recognize bridge jobs. If you are in a job and you want to move, sometimes you have to take something that is going to lead you more closely to your future job. One example that I've had with 2 or 3 people recently is they want to become some kind of consultant to an organization. So one suggestion might be to become a coach, get trained as a coach and work with clients one-on-one and then in groups. And why? Well, that's an identity that helps you move into that role more easily. Whereas if you go, say, from being, say, an accountant or a computer jock to being a consultant in leadership for companies, that might be too big a move. And that's just an example. I'm not saying that's the only way to go, or that maybe you can go from being an accountant to being a leadership consultant. But sometimes a bridge job is what you need. So don't hold out for the ultimate. Recognize a bridge job may be the way to go. Use weekends, nights, vacations, anytime you have to do that. And it may be if you are in between jobs, you take something that doesn't necessarily appeal. That happened to me when I was looking for a job. Actually, I'd had a job where the company had a reorganization, and I was not sure what I wanted to do. So I saw an ad for a job for someone to teach courses, and I had a master's. They wanted a master's degree, and that was fine. So I went in and I said, this is really what I want to do. So I went back to school and got a Ph.D. and spent 20 years being a college professor, which was fine for that time. And it really started with something that I just took as a temporary job. It started out as what I call a perch job, just to bring in income, and then it became a bridge. The job itself, the initial job, was actually really weird. I mean, it was with an off-the-wall place, and it was really but it just gave me a sense that this is what I want, and then I was able to fine-tune the area that I wanted to be in, which was totally different than what I started out in, because I was initially in a place that just did teaching, and then I wanted to do more research, so that's where I ended up moving my career. So you never know when you start out. Just be open to things and be willing to take reasonable jumps. And the risk level is a whole other area that you have to work on, which we won't go into here, but you have to be willing to be open to ideas, and the risk level is up to you. You want to set realistic expectations. Anticipate the downsides of your new career, because every career will have them. Are they tolerable? In my case, if wearing stiletto heels is a requirement, that's a downside I'm not willing to live with. That's out. Traveling 90%, is that a downside, or is that something you can work around? That's something you can anticipate. Decide how you're going to handle those downsides. Are you going to be, are you going to be able to handle them, or are they going to just destroy you to the point where you're not going to want to do it anymore? One example is I knew someone when I was teaching and when I was a college professor who accepted a job in the middle of the Midwest, literally near a cornfield. It was a very prestigious institution, and she should have been really thrilled to be there by any professional standard. But on a personal level, she was miserable. She ended up quitting and getting out of the whole area, working and ended up teaching in a school where she was way overqualified by her academic credentials, because she wanted a certain type of personal life. So for her, the downside was having to live in a small town in the Midwest to get an edge on her career. It was too much for her. By contrast, I knew other people who went to an even worse small town in the middle of Texas, and they were miserable, but they were willing to do that. They were able to handle that to make a move to their next level of career. So you have to decide, only you can decide if that's something you can handle and what you're willing to do for the trade-offs, and really deciding what you can live with. So you can keep your perspective. What is really important? This is not like marriage or parenthood. You can leave a career. It's not like getting a divorce. Well, it can feel like getting a divorce, but it's really usually not as strong. And it's not like being a parent. I mean, you can't walk away from a child. You don't want to walk away from a child, but you can walk away from a career. you move in small steps. You have to realize that everything is going to happen in very small steps. And you want to allow time and then more time. One of the challenges I get is almost always when a client comes, he or she says, my spouse thinks it's been 2 weeks already. I don't have my new career. What's the problem? And keeping a straight face, I'll say it could take 3 to 5 years or more to make a full career change. It doesn't mean that the entire time you'll be looking and being on the prowl for the new career. You'll have peaks and valleys. You may have detours along the way, but it will take time to find a new career. When you're ready to get serious, if you'd like to work with me, here are 2 ways you can do that. The first link, and if it doesn't work on your screen, I'm going to leave it up so you can copy it down and paste it into your browser. budurl.com/career session. That is my full career session where we spend 60 to 90 minutes, and what you come away with is a real blueprint of what you want to do. I have had so many people say after this one session that they got more accomplished than they had in 3 months of coaching with a conventional career consultant. That's why I've designed this session. That's why this program has been designed, because I am aware that more will happen for many people than will happen in 3 months or more of some types of career consulting or coaching. So be aware, it's strong, and you will come away with very specific plans for what you need to do next. If that's not enough, a lot of people tell me that after they hang up the phone, and I have had this myself, they have more questions. They've thought of something that came up. So for the next week, you can email me with follow-up questions as much as you like, and I'll answer them. And I'll also do a video review of your resume or cover letter or any other document you like. And that's the career session. If you prefer, you can download this ebook, which has been my most popular selling ebook. budurl.com/21-day career change. What that is a step-by-step method of it's set up as 21 days, but of course you can take longer or you can go faster, of steps you can take towards a career change. If you take the session, you will get that included. That is a complimentary addition I give people in my reports, ebooks, and videos when they take my sessions. So I want to thank you for joining me today, and look forward to seeing you on future calls. And I want to wish you the very best of success in your career or career change, wherever that may take you.